Hello and welcome to the third video in my class feature series. This is the Darkblade in Fabula Ultima, a guide by Fabula Points. Me! So, like all the other videos, just going to go straight to it. Darkblade. We have 2 pages, one of flavor text. So the Darkblade is your like Avenger, Black Knight, Death Knight kind of character. Very edgelordy if you want to play like the kind of like dark broken type. But yeah, getting into it. Free benefits, you get max HP increased by 5, and you get the ability to equip martial, melee, and armor. Martial melee weapons and armor, I should say. So, the Darkblade is one of those classes that's really simple. It does what it does well, synergizes well with itself, but isn't that sort of great at like dipping into, if that makes sense. So if you want to play as a Darkblade, amazing. If you want to start as something and go into Darkblade, it's not going to be as kind of beneficial if you don't focus on it. So to go over the skills, Agony. You deal after you deal damage to one or more creatures. If you have a bond toward at least one of those creatures, you may recover skill level times 2 hit points and skill level times 2 mind points. So you can spend up to 5 skill points in this. But that's like half of your total like level allocation, and you'll only get 10 health and 10 mind points when you deal damage to creatures if you have a bond to them. So it's incredibly specific, and we'll have a way to create a bond with people, don't get me wrong, and you can use this quite well, but it's quite a hefty investment for what you get back. Okay, Dark Blood. As long as you are in Crisis, you have resistance to dark damage and poison damage. This is incredibly situational. If you know you're about to go through like the Dark Fortress or like the Poison Bog or something in your campaign, um, probably pretty good, but you've got to be in Crisis, and like they're not the most common damage types, so it all depends on your campaign. So this is one I'd probably skip, being honest, unless I knew like the Dark Bog or whatever was definitely coming up. Heart of Darkness. This is a cool one. So once per scene upon entering Crisis, and it doesn't say you have to be put into Crisis by someone else, like you can put yourself into Crisis. You may choose a specific creature that you can see that you don't have a bond towards. If you do, create a bond of hatred. So when we talked about agony before, it only works when you have a bond against someone. So were you to be in Crisis, you can create that bond, and then you can attack them, and then you can get health and mind points back. So it's a way of getting yourself out of Crisis. But again, it's a heavy investment. Painful lesson. After another creature causes you to lose hit points, you may immediately perform the study action on that creature for free. If you do, gain a bonus equal to skill level for your check. You can only study the same aspect of a creature only once. Now, I've taken this skill in my last kind of build video where I made a class which I called the Revenger. Um, and I used it to great effect to be able to kind of study monsters and be like a kind of more of a support role. But we're going just raw Darkblade here. So like it's pretty cool. Like, you can at least put 1 point into it, and that wouldn't be so bad. But the big kind of bread and butter of this build is Shadow Strike. So you can put 5 points into this. You've learned to channel your vital force into your attacks. You may use an action to perform a Shadow Strike. Roll your current might die and lose an amount of hit points equal to the number you rolled on that die. If this doesn't reduce your hit points to 0, you can perform a free attack with the weapon you have equipped. If it hits If this attack hits one or more targets, it deals damage equal to your skill level plus the number rolled on your might die. However, all damage dealt by this attack becomes dark, and its damage type cannot be changed. So this is what I was talking about, the combo before, where you can roll your might die, lose health, and if you lose your health to a point where you enter crisis, you can then create a bond, and then the attack afterwards, you can perform a free attack afterwards. So you can easily do this all at once, where you would then be able to get the health and damage back from Agony because you've done the Shadow Strike to get into Crisis, Crisis to create the bond, and then Agony needs a bond. So like that way. Um, this is the kind of main kind of part of your build. But if we need to kind of understand how often we want to use this attack before we kind of work out how many points to put into it. Because a lot of skills like this are skill level times a number, but Shadow Strike is skill level plus a number. So it's whatever you do on your might die plus 1 through 5, depending on how much you kind of put into this. So if you're a person who wants to use this as their main attack, then obviously the more points you put in, the more you'll be dealing it out. But if you plan to like multi-class into other things that use other attacks and you won't be using this all the time, then the investment won't be that much. Because like 1 point grants you access to be able to do this. The second point lets you do this but only adds 1 to the damage. But we don't actually have that many skills to go around. So let's say, for example, you only wanted to put 1 point into this. You would have 5 into there, that's 6. 3 into here, that's 9. You can pick 1 for 10 and ignore Darkblade. So you could then use that to deal 1 extra die and gain 10 health back. Or you can put 5 into this, 1 into that. You only get 2 health back, but you deal extra damage. So it depends whether you want to try and recover yourself out of crisis yourself, or whether you want to deal more raw damage. So like if you've got like a healer in your team, you might not need agony. But agony works quite well for a spellcaster if you are casting spells to keep recovering mind points. But again, we were going to only talk about Darkblade, weren't we? Right, so these are the main skills, but as you all know by now, each of the classes also has a heroic skill. So if we look at the heroic skills, the first one here on the left is adversity. So you have to master Darkblade. As long as you are suffering from 1 or more status effects, you gain a +1 bonus on all checks for every status effect you are suffering from, and you deal 2 extra damage for every status effect you are suffering from. So, status effects in this game, nicest way to say it, are a bit of a joke. They all they do is each status effect is like tied to a specific attribute, and it lowers your dice size by 1. That's it. So like I thought poisoned would be like a damage over time thing. It isn't. So the statuses are a bit of a joke. So if you gain a status, say like you use a pure strength build here, you get a status that lowers your dexterity, then you're gaining a bonus on your checks and you haven't lost your dice size. So you can use this to get extra damage, and depending on the status, it might not actually affect you that much. So this is a good choice to pick to choose, but there's other options. So I'd fall back on this if you don't like the other options. So the next one, if we go down 2 pages, is called Heartbreaker. So Heartbreaker, you have to master Darkblade class. When you hit a creature with an attack, if that attack only targeted that creature and you have a bond towards them, you may choose to spend half of your current hit points rounded down. If you do, the attack deal extra damage equal to 10 multiplied by the strength of your bond towards the target. You can only use a skill during conflict and only once per turn. So this synergizes even more with the other stuff. So what we could do is we could Shadow Strike. Oh, I didn't mean to click that. We can Shadow Strike. When we Shadow Strike, obviously we roll the might die and we lose hit points. If that hit point takes us to crisis, we can then do what we said before. We can get the bond towards them, and then when we have a bond towards them, like you've already lost the health, and then you can use this to lose half of your current hit points, but your current hit points have gone down since you lost them from Shadow Strike, so you end up ultimately losing a little bit less than if you didn't, or like the combo of a little bit less if you didn't. So if you lose the might die first and then you lose half, you'll end up with more points left than if you lost half first and then lost the might die. So this way around is slightly more beneficial for you. So you get damage equal to 10 multiplied by the strength of your bond, and then it would be if you use Shadow Strike plus the might die as well. So you can use this, especially also if you're in low health. So if you've got like 4 health left, you forego Shadow Strike, you just hit with an attack, you can lose 2 health and get a lot of damage. So this is really good, especially the earlier you get this. Obviously, the later you get this, the more health you get and the more health you lose, but then also the more health you have left. So it's up to you. If you have like a healer that enjoys healing and you can steadily get health back, then Heartbreaker is a fantastic choice. But these aren't the only options we've got. So there's another book, which I don't actually have open. Let's get the high fantasy book out. And I had it in the right place. So it's this one, Pulverizing Strike. After you hit so you need Darkblade, Fury, or Weapon Master. So after you hit or one or more class, either Darkblade, Fury, or Weapon Master, when you hit a character with Breach, which we don't have here, it's one of the from the other one of the classes. If you attack with a melee weapon that belongs to the heavy category, you may have the attack deal damage equal to your high roll instead of dealing no damage. So breach is a way that you could do. Either you can like break an armor piece, or you can like deal magic damage. This is a way of making it do extra damage. So if you're the kind of person that likes to use breach, then this is fantastic. If you're not, then this is kind of useless. But the one I would do probably, because it leans into like the kind of edgelordy stuff, is the Heartbreaker. So the way I would build if I was going for like the Darkbladiest Darkblade is I would probably go why did my mind go blank? I would do Shadow Strike as much as I could. I would do Heart of Darkness, so that's 6. Then I would do just 1 here for 7. I'd do 3 here for 10. So I'd lose out on 2 agony points, I'd lose out on Dark Blood. And then when I hit level 10 in it, I'd pick Heartbreaker. So this means that I get to do the study action for free when I lose hit points. So I'm contributing to understanding how the bad guys, like who they are, how they work, etc. But I'd be trying to deal as much damage as possible and sacrificing my health to do that, which is kind of what a Darkblade is. But that's basically it. There's no spells to learn, there's nothing like that. So yeah, I'm going to leave it here. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.